Okay, welcome to Tip or Not to Tip, a long-form conversation series about tipping and all things restaurant. I'm your host, Cassidy Vanderkap, and today I am with Fred and Liz, the stars of my very first feature documentary. Fred, Liz, thanks for talking with me today.
Hi.
It's really good to talk with you. We've obviously been talking a little bit before, but it's been a long time. We have a long history, and the film should be out now for people to see. So, yeah, if they want to know more about you, they can. But why don't you give a brief introduction of who you are, how we know each other, and yeah, we can kind of go in from there to talk about, yeah, tipping.
I'm Elizabeth Sassen. This is Fred. We owned Homestead Restaurant in California for a number of years. We worked with Cassidy during that time, and fairly early on into our restaurant's existence, we eliminated tips due to a number of factors, but it just ended up working out best for us at that time. And then as Cassidy got, she worked with us in the restaurant, but also was really interested in the conversation. And you came and did your documentary with us about the process. So that's sort of our brief history together.
Yeah, Liz and I are both chefs by training. We worked in San Francisco for about 10 years together and then decided our own venture as Homestead Restaurant in Oakland, California. And we ran that restaurant for about 9, 10 years.
Yeah. So the film, we finished shooting that, I think, in 2018 or 2017. But the film didn't get finished till 2020 and didn't premiere till 2021. So there's been a lot of change that has happened since the film. So part of this conversation is kind of update people about that and where your story left off. But before I get into that, I kind of want to talk to you guys, like, why did you decide to let me share your story? Like, why did you agree to be part of the film?
Well, we had a great relationship. I mean, you had worked with us. You knew intimately the restaurant and kind of that experience from your perspective. We felt like it was an important story to tell, just our personal perspective on going tip free, what tipping culture kind of was about at that time. I think it will be interesting to discuss how things have changed, over the years since we've had that discussion. But there was a lot going on in California, in Oakland, and across the country when we did make that change. And then again, as we can see, things have continued to evolve. But I think at that time, we just felt like it was important to support your support support what you wanted to tell our story, and just show one perspective of how it worked for us.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we were young entrepreneurs and we were out there trying to forge our path. And one thing that oftentimes gets overlooked is, especially in restaurants, people start talking about sustainability but nobody really talks about the financial sustainability of the restaurant. And the other side of owning a restaurant or any business really is how it interacts with the community in a social aspect, but also how it interacts with the community from a legal and governmental aspect. And so, I think that this was shedding light on a toxic element of our industry. And we felt very strongly that our moral compass guided us to share our insight and our experience. And we felt like this was a good platform and vehicle to do so.
Yeah. So how long would you say you've been an advocate for tip free? Was it bubbling up before you went that way, or when you kind of made the decision, that's when you kind of found that path?
I think it's always been under the surface.
Mm-hmm.
There's always been a disparity. There's always been a resentment between different departments. There's been entitlement within different departments to what they feel like. And it was so ingrained in the culture and it was so insurmountable to try and change up until the Measure FF law got instituted. And it just seemed like this is a doorway where there's going to be a path forward to something that's more sustainable for the future for the employees and for the small business.
Right. And so do you think you guys would have made the switch if it hadn't been for some of those legislative pressures? Like, do you think that would have eventually been something that you would have considered?
We would have probably talked about it and not done anything about it.
Yeah.
We
I
would,
think realistically, everyone was backed into a corner with that measure, and people took an infinite number of paths forward with it. But I think until you're faced with a sort of situation where you have to do something different, I don't know if it would have necessarily come to pass. But it definitely was a discussion and would have continued to be a discussion. And I think it's possible we could have gone that way, being emboldened by other businesses that also, even without this measure, did try that model out across the nation. There were a couple different large and small businesses that did try it at a similar time. And it's possible we would have been emboldened by that. But I think ultimately it was that legal reason that kind of pushed us over the edge to take that leap of faith and try it out.
it was a big risk and it's an uncomfortable change and but they put us in a very uncomfortable position, which made it more palatable to take an uncomfortable change.
Yeah.
Right. So, kind of to catch people up, when we finished filming and where the film leaves off now, you guys are still running the restaurant. You're committed to the tip-free model. What happened between then and now? What has changed with the restaurant?
A lot has changed, but in 2020, when restaurants were effectively, at least our style of restaurant was a sit down, face to face community space, with the COVID restrictions that were in place in California that effectively shut our business down. Fred and I were creative, as we have been in any situation where we're put into a tight position. Did pivot our concept and try and maintain our space. But ultimately we decided that once things reopened, we would have had to dedicate a lot of time and finances into kind of redeveloping our business back to what it was pre-2020. And with the prospect of basically starting over, we decided to start our lives over in general. So we did end up closing the restaurant, simply due to that factor, the closing because of the COVID restrictions and just trying to rebuild something in that new era. Having succeeded and having kind of been on top, we were very successful up until that point. And even through COVID, we were, very well received by the community and our pivots. What we had pivoted to was not our goal. It was not what we were passionate about. And so we just decided to do something else. So we picked up, we had expanded our family by a few kids at that point, and just wanted to focus our energy on our family and make a lifestyle change. So we did close the restaurant in 2021, moved out of state, and have started a new path in our life. So
Yeah. And you've told me before that you credit the tip-free model to helping you survive the unpredictability of COVID. Can you explain that a little bit for people? Because I think I've said that to people in conversations about this, and a lot of times they don't understand how or why. Can you kind of explain why that helped you guys in that sort of unpredictability?
Well, yeah, I mean, because we were tip free, we could project what we were capable of spending per employee, and we were able to guarantee them a level of income that a tip wouldn't have guaranteed them. Meaning, we didn't know if we were going to be very busy or very slow, but we knew that we were going to be able to pay our employee. And we were able to budget and make moves knowing what that cost of that employee was going to be. And every decision was very intentional. Had we left it up to the whim of somebody willing to tip or not tip, that employee would be highly demotivated to show up and to continue to put effort in if they knew that nobody was coming in because of the restrictions that were placed upon us. So that continuity in communication and expectation of income, of job performance, that we were in this together, that we were all going to take care of each other together, was really the cornerstone to help us survive COVID and plan our pathway effectively and efficiently.
Right. And how helpful was it that you had taken the step to do that tip-free model years before COVID happened? Did that give you like a stronger foundation going into this unpredictable time?
I think the benefit was it was already an established mode in our business with our staff. We had our core team at that time. Everyone had that expectation already set. And I think so much was so chaotic in 2020 that adding another element of chaos probably would not have gone over well, quite frankly. But having it be established, we had people that had been with us, for a number of years at that point under that model. They knew that they had a security, whereas a lot of their peers in the industry in a traditional tipping model, when those restaurants were opening and closing, pivoting left and right, menus changing, prices changing, if your pay was dependent on tipping, like you didn't know what you were going to get. Some people were being really generous in that way. Some people were just completely cutting out, going out to eat entirely. And so we knew a lot of people that just had, who were at other locations in under a different model. But the people that we were able to keep on staff, there was unknown. It was not, with
Yeah.
known at that time, that was sort of something that was controlled.
Okay.
Yeah, making the transition requires a lot of navigating unknowns, and trying to navigate those unknowns with the unknowns of COVID is, not a good formula. So
Right.
it was a huge benefit that we had kind of
Been established,
tackled a lot of the unknowns, created a culture leading into this, I think was crucial.
Yeah.
But we thrived during COVID.
Yeah.
And as Liz mentioned, it was a conscious choice to not continue.
Yeah.
She mentioned the restaurant closed. I would say the restaurant was sold.
Yeah.
True. Just kind of changing the perspective. We ultimately felt like while the community supported us, the staff supported us, we felt that the local government was not supporting small businesses.
Mm-hmm.
And when posed the question, do you want to reinvest time and money back into this community when the governing body is actively working against us? The question was, as sad as it was, no, we're gonna take our chips off the table at this point.
Yeah, maybe explain that a little bit more. How was the process of all of these changes with COVID? I mean, you mentioned in the film that there wasn't a lot of conversation when you had Measure FF come in and figuring out how to make those changes with businesses. I'm assuming there was a similar problem with COVID. How were those legislative changes communicated to you guys? How is it handled in that way that kind of made you sort of hesitant to keep investing into it?
I think they build on each other. In Measure FF, there was this law being passed without any input from the business community. And whatever, if that was what the community wanted, that's excellent, but there was no communication for businesses of how to implement or how to move forward. So it was really up to us to go through a fine-tooth comb on the local, state, and federal laws to come up with our plan to follow everything to the letter of the law, but also follow the intent of the law, which was, the intent was to uplift the community.
Right.
But fast forward a few years into the COVID times, and that communication was dramatically less. We would find out by the hour new health regulations via Twitter, which we're not even on Twitter.
We found out that the restaurant was closed via Twitter from our mayor.
from someone who sent us a link. Like I'm not on Twitter. That's not where I get my
Our,
news.
our guests called us to tell us that they were canceling the reservations because of a note they saw on Twitter
Because
about the county
governor,
was
the
shutting down.
county, and the communication was absolutely insane. There was no communication. The communication was put into the internet void, and we had to daily, multiple times a day, search local, state, and federal guidelines by the hour to see what we were doing. And so the communication was horrible. The local community communication was horrible. And then they would do things where they're, trying to implement safety guidelines or whatnot, and then trying to do things like, okay, here's a safe way that your business can open. They would allow businesses to open, and then immediately, never mind, that's not happening, that doesn't work. So people are dumping money into outdoor spaces, into different partitions or whatever they could do to get their businesses generating income, only to have it be scrapped. People were wasting tons of money. My favorite story, which did not happen to us, thankfully, but in one of the walkable communities in Oakland, they allowed the building of these outdoor structures, right? These outdoor dining structures. This was a couple months in. Beautiful walkable neighborhood, totally fine. People built these really nice, outdoor seating structures.
Right.
For the city to come back 2 days later and say, for 3 years, we have had this on the agenda to repave this corner of this street. Everything needs to be down within 24 hours because we're going to be doing road work that they knew about for a year, and it was like stuff like that just kind of puts the nail in the coffin. It's like, who wants to do that?
Yeah.
Every day in and day out, months, for years. I mean, we left and they were still going through. We had been doing it for 18 months. At that point, we left 18 months after the first closure, and there was still just so much, who knows when people are going to be opening at a reasonable way. They were still doing, these kind of miscellaneous rule changes. So at some point you just have to decide if you're going to put up with that or carry on and do something else.
Right. And that's not just an easy, quick fix. That seems like a really large, like multiple level communication problem that doesn't have a simple solution.
What a lot of people don't realize is there was national rules, state rules, county rules, and city rules. And so while you might be reading the headlines that California was open, the county wasn't open, and the city most definitely wasn't open. So it was like the county would say you're safe to operate, but the city would say, no, you're not. And there was this standard that was like moving goalposts. I think in the time we were in operation for 18 months during COVID, and during that 18 months, we had furloughed our entire staff, rehired our entire staff, and furloughed them again 4 times. And our staff couldn't get consistent pay because they would get back in the line at the unemployment office to fill out unemployment paperwork. And it would take 3 months to get their paperwork. By the time they get their first check, it's, oh, we can rehire you. We bring them back in, and a week later, oh, you're shut down again, close it up. And there was not a lot of logic. It was very emotionally driven.
And that was a reflection of how it had worked for years. It was just extreme, like the magnifying glass was put on how the local government had operated the entire time.
Like this crucible of like all of a sudden it's heating up, and it's like,
because it was like Measure FF was a mini version of that. It only affected, these restaurants that use minimum wage as a base pay, restaurants that use tipping and service charges, which were a bylaw of Measure FF. And all of that was very localized to the restaurant industry and hospitality industry. But it was like just seeing the problems in that moment magnified across every industry during COVID. There had been no change. It had, in fact, devolved to worse. Going back even further, it reminds me of during the Occupy movement, which was preceded all of that. Oakland had a very similar reaction to all of that, where it was, you can camp out on, the city hall. Oh no, you can't, you can, you can't. You know, we support the protesters, and then suddenly there would be SWAT teams clearing everybody out. So I think it just shows the level of stability in that local government, the communication with the greater governments or lack thereof. You know.
And do you think some of those changes are particularly hard for restaurants? Because restaurants are not like big, profitable, money-making businesses
Correct.
generally. Like you've got certainly people who are successful, but I imagine that would affect the impact on sort of a small business owner trying to make their way in that world.
Oh,
Absolutely.
absolutely. Yeah. I mean, most of these small businesses are fully leveraged to get their businesses up and off the ground.
Mhm.
You know, how many small restaurants have you walked into where the owner is actually working the floor or working the kitchen
Right.
or actively participating in the experience? You know, and there's not a lot of businesses where you walk in the door as a customer and you're greeted by the owner. But in most
Mhm.
restaurants that are local, small restaurants, you are.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And I think it's just the margins are so slim that if and it's a churning machine. Even a successful restaurant, I've worked in large and small restaurants that are successful. The churning keeps it going, and the success is in the momentum. As soon as you throw something in there that halts that for any reason, you know, if you're not a successful business owner, if you're not savvy, creative, and prepared, like it blows up.
Yeah.
And we saw that happen with Measure FF. We saw that happen, and we saw that again in COVID, where you know people cannot handle such a dramatic change to their financial the wheels.
Yeah. Well, in the end of the film, Fred, you say that you think the tipping model is dying. Do you still think that is true? And do you think tip free is the future?
I don't know. I still believe in tip free. If I was going to do another restaurant tomorrow, it would be tip free. I found a huge amount of success in it. I found a huge amount of uh, clarity, joy. I mean, from the consumer to the employee to the health, the financial health of the business. Unfortunately, I think that it requires a very in-depth understanding of how the business works. It requires a dedication to getting through the tough times because there will be tough times. And I think that there's a lot of people who would be scared to put themselves out there. Um, so in the immediate future, no, I don't see a massive shift happening. I do think that it is risen more to the surface. The next major event could be the tipping point that shifts the paradigm. Like one of the things that we're seeing now is with these mobile payment apps, they're asking for tips on everything.
On everything. It's out of control. The tipping
So I think,
requests are out of control.
you know, the saying, you know, hogs get or pigs get fat, hogs get slaughtered. I mean, that's the mentality is why is my HVAC guy coming to perform a task, charging me a trip fee, charging me his hourly rate, and then when I go to sign the invoice, it asks for a 20% tip. It's no, just charge me what you're supposed to charge me
Yeah.
to make sure you're taken care of.
Yeah.
Supply and demand in the community will balance out to make sure that I'm not overpaying.
Right.
And not only has those mobile payment apps have just create, I mean, and you hear it on the street. People are tired of seeing this automatic prompt to be tipped for the most mundane tasks.
It's self-service yogurt stands.
Self-service places everywhere. I mean, everywhere. Right. And if you question it, like, oh, well, it's just the app. It's just the app. But if you don't question it, people are hitting that button, but they're resentful of that. And not only has the amount of places you're expected to tip increased, the amount of tip has increased dramatically.
Along with the prices.
Along with the prices. We see runaway inflation happening. I mean, everywhere across our nation, at least in the United States, inflation is number one on everyone's mind. You're expected to tip on top of everything. Tip is no longer 15%. Tip is now 25% at a lot of restaurants. That's what people are expecting. You know, it went from 15 when I started out in the industry, and I was not a tipped employee, but 15% was the standard. To go out to eat, you tip 15%, whatever. If it's excellent, maybe 18%. Suddenly it rose to 20 somewhere along my career. People were tipping 20. And now I'm seeing that 20 is now the bare minimum. People are expecting more than that. And it's just, you know, I think to Fred's point, like there will come a point in time where people cannot tip for every service. They cannot tip 20% for every service on top of what we're already paying. I mean, it's
Yeah.
unsustainable, the path that it's on.
Well, what do you think the impact is going to be on some of these legislations that are supporting tax-free tipped income? Do you think that's going to make it more likely that people are going to move towards tips?
I don't know that a legislation like that is gonna pass. Is my honest opinion. I very rarely do I ever see the government not want to take more money from somebody. You know, if they do pass a law like this, there's going to be so many loopholes. There's going to be so many qualifiers and criteria that it's going to make it a more cumbersome and bureaucratic process for the owner to manage. And at the end of the day, the simplest thing, I mean, one of my favorite quotes is Leonardo da Vinci. The ultimate form of sophistication is simplicity. Pay somebody what they're willing to do the job for.
Call it a day.
Period. What am I willing to pay you to do this? What are you willing to accept to do this?
Mm-hmm.
It's a pure negotiation. Flat out. The expectation is out there. And if you do well and your results bring in more revenue to my company, then I'm financially incentivized to pay you more to keep you to continue to perform and bring more business. And it works both ways. So, you know, to your point, to your question, I don't think that tip free, I mean, you can see the no tips on over or the no tax on overtime that's they're trying to pass. If you actually read into the fine print, it applies to very few people and it's a very limited scope.
Mm-hmm.
So if they do pass something on tips, it will be in the same realm.
It will sound really great on paper to get people to support it, as we saw with Measure FF. It'll be worded in a way in which people can't say no. And then when it comes to apply, you know, it's not going to be what it was purported
Yeah.
to be.
Yeah. So you guys mentioned that if you ever opened a restaurant again, you would do it tip free. Do you think you will ever open a restaurant again?
I don't know. I have some pretty strong boundaries of what it would require me to go into that industry again. But regardless from a financial standpoint, just from a personal perspective, Homestead was a phenomenal experience. I was in the industry for over 20 years and you for 15. And I learned so much. I grew. It was a huge passion. It is a huge passion of mine, hospitality. And we ultimately accomplished everything we set out to accomplish. And we ended on a high note, sort of, you know, COVID was the down note, but the restaurant was successful. Yeah. We left the restaurant industry on our terms, not as a result of our environment. We made a conscious choice not to continue. So to answer your question, I don't know that I want to rewrite a chapter that had closure to it.
Yeah.
I don't know if there's a reason to.
Right.
I kind of, my stance on it is I'd never say no, and I'm not opposed to the idea. But I would also like to take this new chapter and start new adventures. Yeah. See what else is out there.
Great. So I guess we can kind of close down with asking a couple questions, just sort of your thoughts on tipping. There may be some that have watched the film, are really excited about the tip-free model and want to see what that means to take it on. What would your be advice for people who are attempting to take on a tipless restaurant model?
be open-minded, be transparent. I think the success of it relies on the business owner and operator being those things: transparent, open, honest, and truly caring about the business and the employees who operate it. I think owning a restaurant is a risky endeavor no matter what you do. So I think having that risk tolerance is very important. But it's about culture building. If you're not interested in building a culture within your business, I think that's one of the keys to the success.
I would say communication is the biggest factor. Yes, you have to know your numbers of your industry and your specific business and your community inside and out. You have to do your projections on your worst case and best case scenarios to figure out what's going to be your sustainable path forward. But the ones that I saw that struggled and failed were the ones that had very poor communication plans.
Mm-hmm.
They started off by communicating with their guests, and that's absolutely wrong. You have to communicate within your company.
Mm-hmm.
You are renegotiating the terms on which everybody who works for you agreed to work for you.
Mm-hmm.
And if you want to be supportive of them, you have to give them the opportunity to exit if they don't want to agree to your new terms. And you have to give them some power and control. We had well over 30 days notice to all of our employees of this change. And we were more than happy to help them find the next step if they didn't want to go along with us. That was a critical. Right. Secondly, communicating to the community and the guests was hospitality first. It was hospitality forward. Yeah. We are taking care of you.
Yeah.
Period. Like, we're not here to talk about financial transactions.
Right.
We're here to make sure you're taken care of, to show you with our service, with our execution, with our food, our quality. And oh yeah, the fine print is you don't have to tip anymore.
Right.
If you start the conversation on a financial transaction,
that's
the only thing they can focus on.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and I can vouch that all of that is true because I lived that with you as your employee. So I thought, yeah, the way you guys handled that transition, the way that you worked with us and your customers and just tried to do what you thought was right was very admirable. And that's why I wanted to make the film. So I really appreciate you guys being willing to do that and willing to come here and continue sharing your story and continue talking about this. Last question, kind of end on, obviously we've talked a lot about communication and some of the breakdowns and having these conversations. And I'm sure you have, but also myself going through these, we know how divisive sometimes this can be, talking about minimum wage and paying low paid workers and all of these things. Do you have any sense of what might be helpful to improve the conversation between parties who are affected by this kind of change in a community, whether it's like business owners, lawmakers, even just community members? Do you have any sense of what could be helpful to create better dialogue from what you've experienced?
I mean, I think you have to do what you think is the right thing to do, and not worry about what everybody else thinks. And I think if you have a strong moral compass and you're doing it with integrity, you don't always have to be right, but I think the authenticity will create a baby step to move forward in whatever direction it is you're trying to move forward.
Mm. Yeah, Liz, any thoughts? Oh, sorry.
No, I mean, I think Fred has wrapped it up pretty well, honestly. Yeah.
Great. Well, is there anything else you want to share before we kind of close it down?
No, I mean,
I really appreciate you, Cassidy. I appreciate your commitment to this. And it is something that we feel strongly about, even though we're not within the industry anymore at this time. I'm still very connected to the conversation. I follow the conversation. And I think everyone should. As consumers, we're the ones participating in this as much as a business owner. And just being willing to, be a part of the change even from this side. And just, that doesn't mean going around not tipping, you know what I mean? Like, it's such
Yeah.
a fine, because we do understand where these employees that do rely on tips are, but it's about getting involved in, these conversations, pushing them forward, supporting businesses that operate a business structure that we can appreciate, following the laws that are changing, getting involved in our local governments, all of those things. My eyes have been open to a lot of those things by being a business owner, by going through these experiences. And so, we're here to continue the conversation, to follow it. And, what led us to this point were moral principles that kind of guided us along. And so continuing to follow those, as we go.
Yeah. Okay, great. Well, thanks so much. I appreciate it.
Hey guys, Cassidy here. Thank you so much for making it to the end of this podcast. I am amazed. That's truly a feat in this day and age, so I appreciate you for tuning in. For those of you who don't know, Tip or Not to Tip is a podcast series that I am releasing in conjunction with the public release of my film Tipless, which is a feature documentary that explores the tip-free restaurant movement in America. We premiered the film in 2021, but we're finally releasing the film completely for free to help kickstart what I think is a super important conversation. So if you'd like to check out the film that started this all, I've included a link in the description where you can watch it. It was very much a labor of love to make, so it means a lot personally that anyone wants to take the time and view it. So thank you for watching. Alongside that, we've also provided a link where individuals can contribute monetarily to this project. There's obviously no obligation to contribute, but I know that there might be people out there who like this conversation, want to see it continue, and want to help us to continue facilitating this conversation. So I'm giving people the opportunity to do so. These contributions not only fuel our past efforts, but they're also fueling our future endeavors to figure out ways how we keep this conversation going and in a more productive way. So I sort of think of it this way. You're getting the meal for free. If you like it, you want to show your appreciation, I'm not above accepting a tip. Outside of that, if you want to keep up to date with future episodes, make sure to subscribe, hit the bell, all that jazz. And if you have any suggestions of topics we should cover or people we should talk to, please just leave a comment below or connect with us at tiplessfilm.com. It wouldn't hurt to throw a like on there too. Thank you again for tuning in. Another feat, making it to the end of my spiel. I appreciate it, and I look forward to speaking to you again soon via this weird internet thing we use. Okay, bye.